Thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm really curious to hear from some of you about what you would like to learn more about from us. And one of the questions that has come my way relates to how we pick which species that we're working on, how we kind of organize these conservation efforts in a bigger way than just our own, where some of our money comes from to actually go out and do field work or collect herbarium vouchers or even propagate plants. So I wanted to, first of all, showcase some of the California garden again, because what a wonderful place to be at this time of the year in particular. Spring in Southern California is absolutely glorious. And even though we haven't had a whole lot of rain county-wide, the little bit of supplemental water that we can provide to a garden setting makes for a beautiful and flower-filled place. So first of all, kudos to the California plants, but particularly I'm working today with this little thing right here, this little suncup. And the reason that I'm here with this plant is because we actually received a grant as part of a program that's international, and the ambition in it is to actually capture and catalog and preserve much of the world's biodiversity. And for us, that means plants. This is 𝘊𝘢𝘮𝘪𝘴𝘴𝘰𝘯𝘪𝘢, and this is 𝘊𝘊𝘮𝘪𝘴𝘊𝘢𝘮𝘪𝘢, but that genus, the suncup genus, believe it or not, is not yet represented in this international biorepository of important genetic stuff out there. So we have been recruited, and we're getting a little bit of money to do this work to actually make that the case. So what I'm here to do today is to actually yank this plant out of the ground. And I want to stop myself and give a little bit of a disclaimer here. Do not do this unless you have permission from the landowner and you know absolutely that what you're doing is not a detriment to the ecology of the area. So let me be clear here. This is not an endangered species, for one thing. I do have permission from the state Fish and Wildlife, the county, the city, and my boss. So if you don't have all of your bases covered, please do not go out there and start ripping pieces or plants out of the ground. I beg of you. However, in some cases, it's critically important as part of science and research. So I'm going to do just that. A little bit brutal, I know. Here we have our suncup that once was a plant, and I'm actually going to stick it onto this newspaper here. It's way too big of a piece, but we'll deal with that later on. Pardon the crudeness of this technique. Like I mentioned in a different video, this is actually a pretty ancient practice that we're just following up on a long botanical legacy. Somehow through all of these centuries of work, nobody bothered to collect tissue samples and study the genetics of suncup. So we're hopeful that somebody's going to come along and use our plant for just that purpose. I have it pressed, and that is not the end of this. Believe it or not, I'm now going to make notes here about where our GPS location is. What's our elevation? What's the soil type like? And I can tell you that suncups like a really sandy soil. What else is growing around us? All of these things get captured and cataloged as part of this herbarium sheet and tissue sample, so that when this material is used for research or conservation purposes, you have the whole context of that plant's life cycle, that plant's environment. If I had even noticed certain pollinators visiting the thing before I ripped it out of the ground so brutally, that would be noteworthy as well. So being that this is a botanical garden and I'm in the midst of so many cool plants, I just want to mention that one of the things that's really important in capturing is what else grows with this plant. Plants usually exist in communities, and often you'll see the same types of different species relationships in similar ecosystems in different areas. So while I'm here, I have artemisias around me, I have 𝘊𝘢𝘮𝘪𝘴𝘴𝘰𝘯𝘪𝘢, I have leptosini gigantea, I actually have cliff buckwheat, which is Eriogonum parvifolium, several different species of Dudleya, Salvia munzii, another really rare plant behind me. We have Trichostemma lanatum, woolly blue curls in the background. I promise you that there's nowhere else that you can actually find this kind of diversity, particularly of plants so characteristic to Southern California, except for right here. So we are going to continue to work on bringing more money into plant conservation efforts, building out this program that we're developing, as well as continuing to create this beautiful and flourishing landscape using this plant palette that you're only going to find at a botanical garden. Thanks for all of your questions and your support, and let me know what else you would like to know.